We've spent a lot of this lecture looking at data governance and data quality. This is essential because you cannot have good quality health information or knowledge without good data. Now you may know that some big data analysts dispute this statement, but I would point out that big data means really an enormous amount of data that reduces the overall likelihood that erroneous or aberrant data will have a significant impact on the outcomes of processing. This volume of data is not present for any one patient or even within one healthcare organization. Furthermore, we know from clinical research that even when many large studies are done on new drugs or new procedures, there still are not the volumes of data such as the millions of Facebook entries or Amazon orders placed or whatever. As a patient, I would prefer to have a little more data quality. But just the same, we do want to also talk about information governance, because the information that is processed is also retained and used with experience applied to create knowledge. Now I want to interject an important note here. Information governance principles are included in the AHIMA Data Quality Management Model and address accountability, transparency, integrity, protection, compliance, availability, retention, and disposition. I have added privacy to this list and have modified some of the definitions slightly from the AHIMA document in order to reflect the broadest view possible of how information governance may be applied. Hence, accountability and transparency refer to how information governance is performed. Accountability is the executive leadership, governance, and stewardship, and transparency refers to the data, information, and knowledge governance that are documented, visible, and subject to oversight. The other terms relate more to processes performed on information. Privacy referring to uses and disclosures, and rights to notice, request for restrictions, confidential communications, access, amendment, and accounting for disclosures. Integrity refers to protection from alteration, change control requirements, and error correction. Protection refers to access controls, audit logs, encryption, backup, disaster recovery, business continuity, essentially security. Compliance refers to documentation that meets regulatory requirements, ethical use of information, intellectual property ownership, and breach notification. Availability of information refers to timely and efficient retrieval of data and information. Retention of the information is the lifespan of data information as required by statutes of limitation, other laws, and entity policy. And finally, disposition, of course, refers to record storage, transfer, and destruction. Just as data modeling is important to data quality, information modeling is also important to information quality. An overarching information model is a representation of concepts, relationships, constraints, rules, and operations to specify data for a specific domain required to generate desired information. An information model is the overarching support structure for managing all data, be it structured or unstructured, that may be used within a particular domain, such as healthcare. As the predominant standards development organization that supports exchange of information among disparate information systems within healthcare, Health Level 7, or HL7, has created what it calls a Reference Information Model, or the RIM, for healthcare. From this model, all exchanges of data within healthcare may be defined. The RIM is expressed as an entity relationship diagram, as we discussed under data modeling, using special software from IBM called Rational Rows. It is a huge document that's color-coded to illustrate entities, roles, forms of participation, and acts, the primary constructs within an entity relationship diagram. Individuals who take on positions of database administrator, data administrator, or software developer for healthcare should have an appreciation if not deep understanding of the RIM, because essentially all information modeling done for a given application must ultimately fit within the construct of the RIM, or be subject to subsequent inclusion. For end users, the knowledge that such an overarching information model exists should afford reassurance that EHR and supporting source systems are developed within a logical structure. Lastly, we want to take a closer look at knowledge governance. Knowledge governance is a much newer concept than data and information governance. It is not as well defined, and some would suggest it is a fairly academic construct at this time. I do believe, however, that we need to pay attention to how knowledge is generated and how it is used, especially as we seek in value-based care to transform not just the payment side of healthcare, but the quality side that requires us to look at new and better ways to diagnose and treat and contribute to the health of persons. Knowledge becomes an ever more important aspect of how we make informed changes to the practice of medicine. In addition, as we share data and information, we also need to share knowledge. In fact, sharing knowledge may be more important from a macro point of view so that all persons will benefit from changes made as a result of evidence that encourages the change. It has been acknowledged that knowledge governance is critical in creating learning organizations, which one prominent thought leader in healthcare transformation has defined as where people continually expand their capacity to create the results they truly desire, where new and expansive patterns of thinking are nurtured, where collective aspiration is set free, and where people are continually learning to see the whole together. Data from longitudinal population surveys and from clinical research provide the evidence from which to develop guidelines that go into our decision support and quality measures. These ultimately guide the care delivery process. It is essentially that the outcomes of the care delivery process, both as codified in the EHR and the personal health record, into the evaluation of evidence to continuously improve guidelines development, decision support, and quality measurement. The evaluation of evidence and the feedback loop necessary to supply quality evidence as there is continual change in our environment is essential. I think now, with the backdrop of all the exciting new technology we discussed in the first lecture of this unit, plus the perhaps more sobering concepts of data, information, and knowledge governance in this lecture, we're now ready to take a deeper dive into interoperability that is required for both sharing data in a more coordinated care environment and performing more sophisticated analytics to hopefully speed up and make better the knowledge generation process for transitioning to value-based care, which are the topics of Unit 6. And with that, we've come to the end of the second lecture in Unit 5 on technical needs for value-based care. References used to develop this lecture include several textbooks available from AHIMA and other publishers. There are fewer articles available on the internet regarding data information and knowledge governance that are specific to healthcare. Much of what pertains to healthcare has been adapted from other industries. Don't forget to complete your assessment for Unit 5 at the conclusion of this lecture.